Saturn? For I am the god of 1,000 names. One has to take note that Saturn takes on many names across many cultures and civilizations. In later developments, Saturn would also be associated with time and death, Father Time and the Grim Reaper. And he is usually depicted carrying the hourglass and sickle or scythe. The sickle or scythe of Father Time is a remnant of the agricultural implement of Cronus Saturn. And his aged appearance represents the waning of the old year with the birth of the new, in antiquity sometimes embodied by iron. In late antiquity, Saturn is synchronized with a number of deities, and begins to be depicted with wings, as is Kairos, rendered as timing, scene of good time. Saturn has been known by many names, for most religions were based on retellings of previous stories. Most, if not all, of the ancient religions had Saturn in their pantheon of gods. To the Romans he was known as Saturn in ancient Roman religion, and a character in myth. Saturn is a complex figure because of his multiple associations and long history. He was the first god of the capital, known since the most ancient times as Saturnius Mons, and was seen as a god of generation, dissolution, plenty, wealth, agriculture, periodic renewal and liberation. His reign was depicted as a golden age of plenty and peace. He was also known as the god of harvest. The temple of Saturn in the Roman Forum housed the state treasury. In December, he was celebrated at what is perhaps the most famous of the Roman festivals, the Saturnalia, began on December 17th. On the Julian calendar, originally the ritual only lasted for 1 day. In later years, however, the celebration lasted for 7 days. It consisted of a winter solstice celebration marked by carnival, exchange of gifts, feasting, license and misrule, and a cessation of all public works. Masters served slaves, kings were chosen by lot, usually from among criminals or slaves, to preside over the feast, given as ears, and then slain. A sacrificial victim was chosen to represent both the god himself and the king's surrogate. He was slain and sent to the underworld to merge with his divine counterpart. Its riotous indulgence is the source of the phrase Saturnalia of crime. It is said to have merged into the Christmas festival. The Roman Saturn, however, had 2 consorts who represented different aspects of the god. The name of his wife Ops, the Roman equivalent of Greek Rhea, means wealth, abundance, resources. Earlier was his association with Lua, destruction, dissolution, loosening, a goddess who received the bloodied weapons of enemies destroyed in war. Saturn was named after the Roman god of agriculture and harvest. While the planet may have gotten its name from its golden color, like a field of wheat, it also had to do with its position in the sky. According to mythology, the god Saturn stole the position of king of the gods from his father Uranus. The throne was then stolen by Jupiter. Saturn has had a lasting impact upon Western culture. Most notably, he is the namesake of Saturday, which was originally referred to in Latin as Dies Saturni or the Day of Saturn, and was in turn adapted and became the source of the English word. This stands as the only day of the week to retain its Roman name in English. In astronomy, the name of Saturn has been given to the 6th planet from the Sun. In classical antiquity, the planet Saturn was considered the furthest planet of the 7 heavenly objects that is visible to the naked eye, and was thereby corresponded to the 7th day of the week. Also, the phrase referring to a Saturnalia of crime takes root from the aforementioned festival dedicated to the god and the chaotic indulgence it entailed. Moreover, some have entertained the theory that Saturnalia may have influenced the popular Christian holiday Christmas, as both events occur in late December and involve the exchange of gifts. To this day the modern Catholic Church retains a lot of the Saturn worship in its rituals. To the Greeks he was Kronos. Cronus or both Chronos and Kronos was in Greek mythology the leader and the youngest of the first generation of Titans, the divine descendants of Uranus, the sky and Gaia, the earth. He overthrew his father and ruled during the mythological Golden Age, until he was overthrown by his own son Zeus and imprisoned in Tartarus. Cronus was the ruling Titan who came to power by castrating his father Uranus. His wife was Rhea. Their offspring were the first of the Olympians. To ensure his safety, Cronus ate each of the children as they were born. This worked until Rhea, unhappy at the loss of her children, tricked Cronus into swallowing a rock, instead of Zeus. When he grew up, Zeus would revolt against Cronus and the other Titans, defeat them, and banish them to Tartarus in the underworld. Cronus managed to escape to Italy, where he ruled as Saturn. The period of his rule was said to be a golden age on Earth, honored by the Saturnalia feast. Cronus was usually depicted with the harp, a type of hook-shaped long sword, and/or a sickle, which was the instrument he used to castrate and depose Uranus, his father. In Athens, on the 12th day of the Attic month of Hecatombaion, a festival called Cronia was held in honor of Cronus to celebrate the harvest, suggesting that, as a result of his association with the virtuous Golden Age, Cronus continued to preside as a patron of harvest. Cronus was also identified in classical antiquity with the Roman deity Saturn. During antiquity, Cronus was occasionally interpreted as Kronos, the personification of time. According to Plutarch, the Greeks believed that Cronus was an allegorical name for Kronos. In addition to the name, the story of Cronus eating his children was also interpreted as an allegory to a specific aspect of time held within Cronus' sphere of influence. As the theory went, Cronus represented the destructive ravages of time which consumed all things, a concept that was definitely illustrated when the Titan King devoured the Olympian gods, the past consuming the future, the older generation suppressing the next generation. Kronos' association with the Saturnian Golden Age eventually caused him to become the god of time, that is calendars, seasons, and harvests, not now confused with Kronos, the unrelated embodiment of time in general. Nevertheless, among Hellenistic scholars in Alexandria and during the Renaissance, Cronus was conflated with the name of Kronos, the personification of Father Time, wielding the harvesting scythe and hourglass. Kronos, Father Time. Greek translation meaning time, also transliterated as Kronos or Latinized as Kronos, is the personification of time in pre-Socratic philosophy and later literature. Kronos was imagined as a god, serpentine shape in form, with three heads, those of a man, a bull, and a lion. He and his consort, Serpentine Anunk, Inevitability, circled the primal world egg in their coils and split it apart to form the ordered universe of earth, sea and sky. Kronos was confused with, or perhaps consciously identified with, due to the similarity in name, the Titan Kronos already in antiquity, the identification becoming more widespread during the Renaissance, giving rise to the allegory of Father Time wielding the harvesting scythe. He was depicted in Greco-Roman mosaics as a man turning the zodiac wheel. Kronos, however, might also be contrasted with the deity Ion as eternal time. Kronos is usually portrayed through an old, wise man with a long, grey beard, similar to Father Time. Some of the current English words whose etymological root is Kronos/Chronos include chronology, chronometer, chronic, anachronism, and chronicle. To the Hindus he is known as Shani. In Vedic astrology the planet Saturn is called Shani. In Sanskrit, Shani comes from Sanischara, which means slow mover. From Shani we get the word shun, which means to ignore or to lose awareness of something. Thus Saturn represents a loss of awareness, or ignorance. This loss of awareness can also mean the diminishing awareness of the material world of manifestation. Saturn, or Shani in Hindi, is a planet which is feared by many people, most dreaded planet. According to Hindu Puranas, scriptures, and Vedic astrology, Shani is considered to be a son of Surya, sun, and Chaya, shadow. His color is considered to be same as an Indraneel Mani, also known as Neelam, blue sapphire. Certainly Saturn also represents darkness. Astrologically, the metal iron and color black are associated with him. The wife of Saturn is Param Tejasvi. One day she went to him to request a son. But Shani Dev was busy meditating and praying to Lord Krishna. After waiting a long time, his wife got agitated and cursed Shani that wherever, and whoever he sees will get destroyed. This causes Shani to keep his head down all the time. Shani hates actions such as fraud, deceit, telling lies, consuming alcohol, gambling, staying unclean, animal cruelty, and disrespect of God, parents or elders. This is the mythology behind the harmful drishti aspect of Shani. According to Vedic astrology, Saturn is beneficial in the house it occupies, but harmful to the houses which it aspects. Shani aspects 3rd, 7th and 10th house from the one it occupies. Shani is considered to be the strongest malefic and a stern teacher who represents patience, effort, endeavor, and endurance, and who brings restrictions and misfortunes. Saturn is also related to truth and reality. To reduce the depth of suffering during the period of Saturn's affliction, he is appeased through worship. However, as with the basis of Hindu philosophy of monism, truth is one, the worship of Saturn is a means of worshipping the one source. To the Sumerians he was Ninurta, Ninur, god of war. In Sumerian and the Akkadian mythology of Assyria and Babylonia, was the god of Lagash, identified with Ningersu, with whom he may always have been identified. In older transliteration the name is rendered Ninib, and Ninip. And in early commentary he was sometimes portrayed as a solar deity. A number of scholars have suggested that either the god Ninurta or the Assyrian king bearing his name, Tukulti-Ninurta, was the inspiration for the biblical character Nimrod. In Nippur, Ninurta was worshipped as part of a triad of deities including his father, Enlil, and his mother, Ninlil. In variant mythology, his mother is said to be the harvest goddess Ninhursag. The consort of Ninurta was Ugalu in Nippur and Bau when he was called Ningersu. Ninurta often appears holding a bound arrow, a sickle, sword, or a mace named Shara. Shara is capable of speech in the Sumerian legends, deeds and exploits of Ninurta, and can take the form of a winged lion and may represent an archetype for the later Shedu. In another legend, Ninurta battles a bird-like monster called Imdugut, Akkadian, Anzu. A Babylonian version relates how the monster Anzu steals the tablets of destiny from Enlil. The tablets of destiny were believed to contain the details of fate and the future. Ninurta slays each of the monsters, later known as the slain heroes: the warrior dragon, the palm tree king, Lord Samanana, the bison beast, the mermaid, the seven-headed snake, the six-headed wild ram, and despoils them of valuable items such as gypsum, strong copper, and the Magellan boat. Eventually, Anzu is killed by Ninurta, who delivers the tablet of destiny to his father, Enlil. Ninurta, also called Ningersu, in Mesopotamian religion, city god of Gersu, Dal-Ar, or Tower, in the Lagash region. Ninurta was the farmer's version of the god of the thunder and rainstorms of the spring. He was also the power in the floods of spring and was god of the plough, and of ploughing. Ninurta's earliest name was Imdugut, now also read as Anzu, which means rain cloud. and his earliest form was that of the thundercloud envisaged as an enormous black bird. Hindu Shani sits upon a black bird, floating on outstretched wings, roaring its thunder cry from a lion's head. With the growing tendency toward anthropomorphism, the old form and name were gradually disassociated from the god as merely his emblems. Enmity towards the older unacceptable shape eventually made it evil, an ancient enemy of the god. The Zoroastrians knew Saturn as their heaven-sustaining Zavan, Zavon, Zruvan or Zavan, aka the King and Lord of the Long Dominion, Lord of the Hours, aka Deity of Matter, the One, alone. The Zoroastrians represented Zavan time, by an enclosing serpent. The Middle Persian name derives from Avestan Zruvan, meaning time or old age. Also presented as winged gods are the Persian Mithra and Zavan, the Hebrew and Phoenician El, the Greek Kronos, and all of the leading deities of ancient Egypt. Zavan is also linked in his westernized form with Iron. Zavan is the primordial god in Persian religion, and the god of infinite time and space. Zavan is the father of the good god Ahura Mazda, and Angramenu, who is also Ahriman. He had to make sacrifices for 1,000 years to get them because he is androgynous, being without gender, without passion. With Zavan's children representing the two opposites, Zavan himself is regarded as a neutral god, one for whom there is no distinction between good or evil. Zavan is also the god of destiny, light and darkness. In Zavanism, the state religion of the Sassanids in the 3rd and 7th century CE, Zavan is the highest god and lord of the four elements. That is earth, wind, fire and water. Iranian Zavan is related to the Sanskrit word Sava and carries a similar semantic field in describing the monistic deity. The Zoroastrians claimed that the created world was the giant spire, cosmos, the body of the great god Zavan. Time, Saturn, a revolving wheel called the spire, which remained ever in the same position. The fall of the stationary wheel coincided with the collapse of the primordial era. In Saturn the primal male and female principles unite, yielding the hermaphrodite or androgyne. Few of the preeminent deities of antiquity are free of this duality. The Sumerian Anu, Ninurta, Dambus, and Enki, the Hebrew El, the Hindu Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva, the Iranian Zavan, the Mexican Quetzalcoatl, all reveal a female dimension. Their spouse is never wholly separated from their own body. In Zoroastrian myth this celestial giant is Zavan, widely recognized as Saturn. The mystic traditions define Zavan as the first principle, and the original seed. He is the father of the cosmos. From his seed proceeds the entire material cosmos. In the creation Zavan provided, or emitted, the original unformed matter, from which the wheel of the cosmos was produced. The idea is precisely that of the Egyptian, primeval matter, or the alchemist's prima materia, that is Adam, the primordial man. Blavatsky states, Zavan is the unknowable, uncognizable deity of boundless space, the unknown cause, the one who has always existed, limitless time in eternity, the boundless circle of the unknown time. Zavan's glory is too exalted, its light too resplendent for either human intellect or mortal eye to grasp and see. The primal emanation of Zavan was eternal light that had previously been concealed in darkness. Mistaken identity. In his first manuscript of his book Zavan, R.C. Zana incorrectly identified the Mithraic lion-headed deity with the representation of Zavan. He later admits at the proof stage that this was a positive mistake, the lion-headed deity being a representation of the evil being Deus Ahrimanius or Ahriman. Nonetheless, the various similarities of Ahriman with the Zoroastrian Zavan/Saturn cannot be ignored. is the same as Bel, Belus or Baal-Hamon, and he was the supreme male divinity worshipped by the Chaldeans, Phoenicians and Canaanites. Baalim is plural. Baal means Lord and can be a title in front of a name such as in Lord Hammon, or Baal can be used alone and simply refer to the specific deity. Baal was also known as the Ancient One, the Ancient of Days, Rider of the Clouds, the Mighty One, the Hero, the Exalted One, the Prince and Lord of the Earth. Baal was originally a sun god. Among the Assyrians, by some system of sacred matters, both Saturn and Sol, that is the sun, are called Bel. The worship of Baal-Hamon flourished in the Phoenician colony of Carthage. Baal-Hamon was the supreme god of the Carthaginians, and is believed that this supremacy dates back to the 5th century BC, apparently after a breaking off of relationships between Carthage and Tyre, at the time of the Punic defeat in Himera. Scholars tend to see Baal-Hamon as more or less identical with the god El, who was also generally identified with Cronus and Saturn. The Roman god Saturn in Africa Proconsular is absorbed elements of the mythology associated with Baal-Hamon. Carthaginians brought the cult of Baal-Hamon with them to North Africa in the 9th century BC from their home in the Levant. Baal's usual designation was god of thunderstorms, agriculture, and the Lord of Heaven. Baal was also representative of the sun, fertility, and human sacrifice. It is doubtless the early Punic colonists brought their tradition of sacrificing children to Baal shortly after their arrival. After the Punic-Roman Wars between 265 through 146 BC, of which Rome triumphed, Rome seized and ordered Carthage destroyed. The Roman colonists quickly assimilated the figure of Baal-Hamon to Saturn. The Romans built some of their most beautiful temples to Saturn over sites formerly dedicated to Baal-Hamon. After the Romanization of Carthage, Saturn became the most honored by the Carthaginians, and Saturn was the Moloch of the Jewish scripture. Kivon or Gion is the planet Saturn, Baal also is Saturn, and thus Kivon is Baal. Child sacrifice remained a common practice. Offerings were then given to Saturn instead of the former Baal-Hamon. El and Baal are often associated with the bull in Ugaritic texts, as a symbol both of strength and fertility. They have also built the high places of Baal, to burn their sons with fire for burnt offerings unto Baal, Jeremiah 19:5. It seems Baal was later demonized as Belial, or Beelzebub. A common practice amongst tribal cultures was to demonize each other's conflicting gods, as to keep people from worshipping them. The term, Belial, is a Hebrew adjective meaning, worthless, from two common words Beli, without, and Yal, value. Beelzebub or Lord of the Flies is a derogatory Hebrew corruption of the original Ugaritic Baal-Zebul, which means Lord Baal or Master of the Heavenly House. Some Hebrew scholars maintain the translation as dung or excrement, giving Beelzebub the sarcastic meaning of Lord of Shit. Nonetheless, both Belial and Beelzebub are now names that were transferred to the devil and Satan. Yet another example of how gods are altered and absorb attributes of each other. Baal, Bel, Belus, Belial, Beliar and Beelzebub are names of one and the same personality, who in the New Testament is styled as Prince of this world, Prince of the power of the air and a god of this world. Furthermore, the worship of Baal is still prominent today. In Freemasonry, he is called and idolized as the supreme ruler of the universe or the great architect of the universe. The great architect is Jabelon or Jabelon, which breaks down to Jah, Bel and On, three ancient names of the sun god. Bel is the same god as the Phoenician Moloch. The Greeks, for the purpose of distinction, termed him the Tyrian Hercules. Freemasons call him their Tyrian architect. According to scripture, the temples of this idol were built on the tops of hills, or more frequently in solemn oak groves, the high hills and low vales, where the religious services of masonry are supposed to have been anciently practiced. In Babylon the oak tree was sacred to Bel. The oak of Moreh, Genesis 12, 6-7. the oaks of Mamre, Genesis 13, 18 and 18:1, and the diviner's oak, Judges 9:37. The oak also appears to have been a symbol of worship among the Celts and ancient Britons. The Celts worshipped their god, Turt, under the form of this tree, and the Britons regarded it a symbol of their god, Dun-Owa, the god of thunder, from who, the Bacchus of the Druids, came the word Yule, but others derive it from Baal, Bel or Yule, who was the Celtic god of fire, and sometimes identified with the sun, and was also worshipped under the form of an oak. Baal was considered the same as the Roman Saturn, and his festival, that of Yule, was kept at Christmas, which was the time of Saturnalia. In ancient times the burning Yule log was always of oak.